Vi tilbake med vinpraten denne uken, og vi har flott besøk fra Piemonte. For noen uker siden så var jeg på pressesmakingen til Vinmonopolet, og det var en vin som utpekte seg kraftig. Jeg har 91 poeng, og det gikk et gisp gjennom forsamlingen. Og litt tilfeldigvis så sitter jeg her dagen etterpå og snakker med en av de som har laget vinen, en Barolo La Morra, som fantastisk. Når denne kommer ut, så mye av flaskene, det nesten 6,000 som kommer inn, men kanskje det kommer mer, vi skal høre noen. But welcome to the podcast, Giovanna.
Thank you.
Just going to have a short introduction for myself to you, what you are in the Norwegian aspect from me. But the first time I tasted Giovanna was a Barbera. And in Norway, we are a Barbera country. So was another Barbera, yes. It was two women in Piemonte who have delivered a winery from his father. Yeah, that's boring. And then we tasted it. And then it had acidity, it was strength, it was concentration, the price was good, and we loved it. And I make an article very early about it, and I said this was success. And what happened is that the Norwegian were reading articles, people talk, suddenly the sales was going up after a little while, and then suddenly you are more often in Norway, it seems.
Then I'm home.
Yeah, at your home. But please tell me, we start a little bit of the history of the brand?
Yeah.
And then we are moving a little bit to how you come into Norway. And then we have to talk about the donkey Thomas. But we're going to leave that for the end.
For the end.
But listen, everyone, the donkey Thomas is a fantastic story.
It's an insight.
So how did this all start?
So Brandini started in 2007 when my father got this estate from a previous owner that founded the winery in the 80s. But it was mainly growing grapes to sell to bigger wineries or bulk wine. It was not really making a label at the estate. And for my father, it was very unique to find a little corner of Barolo that was not exploited yet under a label or a certain style. It was honestly a little bit risky because 16 years ago, that estate being almost 500 meters of altitude and facing towards the Alps, it was cold weather. So also many people told him that it would have been a struggle to get ripeness because it was too high in altitude and too cold of wind from the Alps. But he fell in love with the property, believed into it, and decided to take it over. We started with 7 hectares around the property that he converted immediately to organic. And he started, and then my sister and myself kind of grew up into it.
Yeah, because this is 2007.
Yeah.
So you were younger, much younger.
Yeah, we were teenagers.
Yeah, you're teenage.
Very.
Today you are married and you're settled and everything.
Yeah.
But how was the prices that time compared to today? If the same property had been bought today, it had been much more expensive, or
I think nowadays would be minimum around 5 times more.
5 times more, yeah. So it was a perfect time, but you didn't know.
It was a great timing. And honestly, when we bought Brandini, you could tell it was very different timing because Brandini was the occidental side of La Morra going towards Verduna and Carrasco. We still had a lot of woods around that.
Yeah.
A lot of trees,
in the north of Piemonte, up in the hills.
Yeah.
Behind La Morra there.
Exactly.
Place to be.
So to tell that there were a lot of trees and forests around us and not everything was planted vineyard, it meant that it was kind of a hidden gem. It was still undiscovered because back then, and of course when the Barolo borders were set and the single vineyard came around, the best vineyard was considered the one where the snow will melt first because you had more chances of a longer season and to get fully ripened. But nowadays it's very different. Everyone is moving up in altitude, so we got lucky. My father had a good vision. So
it started out that your father and your mother was starting up 2 daughters, and there was a family project a while.
Yeah.
But then the teenagers are getting older, and they are taking over the control. Or did you kick out your parents? Or?
No, we didn't.
No.
They're still there, but we are extremely lucky, my sister and I, that my mom and dad believed into us. And when both my sister Serena and I decided that was our life and we wanted to dedicate our time and work to it, they kind of stepped back and gave us full charge of the estate. And of course, together with our beautiful team, and that have many of them have been there since the beginning.
Yeah.
So it has been a beautiful adventure. A lot still to learn, but
But now you're going some certain amount of hectares when you bought it, and then now how big are you today?
Now we have around 25 hectares between property and some lease.
Yeah, so it's you have more, because the success is in Norway also have upside that you have many wines in Norway. I've told in the introduction that you just released this beautiful Barolo coming into the basic listing, so you're in all shops. But for me, the Barbera and the Lagenby, and we're going to talk about also the Dosetto in a later episode. But what I feel from outside and watching you, because many times when I taste wine, I taste some thousands, I decide to travel, to come to visit, because I can't really believe that, this is coming up. And Norwegian, they are spoiled, not spoiled with very good Barbera, but we drink a lot of it, but it's coming up. But I felt the sensation of the acidity. And could you tell me a little bit, how do you think your Barbera is compared to others? And why it's pointing out to the Norwegian palate, as you know it today? Because now you have met many Norwegians.
Yeah. Thankfully. I think, so one day I heard this quote about Barbera that really stuck with me. And that it said that you can make a Barbera that looks like Mike Tyson, or you can make a Barbera that is more like Sophia Loren. And I definitely decided I wanted Sophia Loren.
Okay. With the long hair.
Long hair, elegant.
Yeah.
Definitely with a character, but very elegant and fine. And I do think you can still make Barbera of elegance and finesse. It really depends on the vineyard. So it definitely depends on the terroir, on the location. If you have a little bit of altitude and maybe not a full south-facing vineyard, it helps. Because especially in the last decade, being warmer and warmer and drier weather, it is better if you have a little bit of a different site. But I also think it depends on the picking decision. It depends on the winemaking, on the extraction. You can definitely go for a bigger body, juicy Barbera, or you can do something more focusing on acidity, on the fruit, on the flower, on the elegance.
Yeah.
And we definitely like to do that version.
But the acidity, a touch of it, yeah.
Yes. So I do love food together with wine. And I always look, when I make wine, to have wine that will not be overwhelming of the food. I always think wine should elevate food and food should elevate wine, being wine part of your meal, especially in our culture in Italy. So I do think that beautiful acidity of Barbera makes it the perfect wine to pair with food because it cleans your palate, it makes your mouth water, so it pairs very well.
Yes.
And I've always tried to achieve that in Barbera. And I think that settled very well nowadays with people, with consumers, because we're also changing a little bit the way we eat. We don't eat maybe fried food, a lot of butter and cream and a lot of fat food anymore, but we're more and more into maybe veggies or lighter food, few ingredients but higher quality. And I think that pairs very well with good acidity and freshness of Barbera.
So after your opinion, that the Norwegian, they are a little bit fan of acidity levels. And sometimes when they are looking for food stuff, myself is one of the issues we have to look at is acidity levels. But when I was visiting the beautiful property with a swimming pool, good food and truffles and all that, I went to a wine bar called Barolo Bar. And I asked the owner, what do you think of this brand? And, local, they are talking. I say, they have very good acidity. That's the first thing you mentioned. And for me, that's a key point, because if you go to other producers, they are making their kind of wines, but to the Norwegian market, well, so much wine in the monopoly, they are actually, one of the benefits is to go in the direction of style. And then you win. And you have won a lot of thoughts when you arrived at Oslo, and also when you go to Bergen soon and you're around. But today we have brought two wines. We have brought the Ingen Nebbiolo and the beautiful vintage of 2019 La Morra. We're going to taste. But from the background, when you're from a teenager to you're now running a place, what was the first impression when you arrived at the winery? The condition was bad. I remember that you told me that you have to done a lot of things inside and outside. You've been home. No, you moved out, but you.
Yeah, we have a little hotel.
Little hotel and restaurant. So there's a lot to do. So So your sister, who's not here today, but we're going to say hello to her.
For sure.
Yeah. But how was your first experience when you arrived?
I think the beautiful thing is that we could always see a potential behind it. You can see there was like a Cinderella into it. It just needed to have a better dress to be taken care of. And number one for us were the vineyards. They were farmed conventionally as 99% of vineyards. So they did need some love, some extra love. So my father converted everything to organic, which was amazing, especially 16 years ago, not being that obvious. People didn't really understand what organic was. I think still nowadays there's a little bit of confusion between organic, biodynamic, natural, and all of it. But back then, even more so, they thought you were like a hippie dancing under the moon, hoping for some rain to come. But
have you ever seen him dancing under the moon?
No, I've seen him dancing many times, not in the vineyard, but
okay. So he's not a hippie. Okay.
He's not.
Yeah, that's good.
But he grew up in the 80s, so 70s, 80s.
But he have a vision that he also transformed to you.
Yeah.
And then, how old was you when you were coming in for the first time as a teenager?
Me?
Yeah.
I was 13.
Yeah. So you were more shy.
Yeah.
So you were more interested in the alcohol than the
It was fun because when you first come into a winery and you're 13, you see all this thing going on, and it looks like a laboratory. It looks like everything. It looks very technical, and it looks scary a little bit. Yeah. Everything looks very big and heavy, and it's a lot of little details that you need to take care of. But then you start going back every year and following harvest and just looking what everyone is doing, and there is obviously. It is kind of a dance that everyone is doing, and you get more and more into it, and you want to be part of it. So it has been very fascinating, but definitely the first work was in the vineyard and in the winery, trying to get new equipment, good technology, clean up everything. And in the vineyard, definitely was the change has been amazing after 15 years. I think that's more or less what it takes to see the real difference between a conventional and an organic farming vineyard. 15 years, it's when it really gets cleaned out. And you see nature coming back, you see the biodiversity coming back, insects, wild herbs. You see a lot of life coming back.
But from my point of view, from outside looking in, introduction in some years ago to the Barbera first, then visiting, seeing you, you're not 13 when I was arriving. No. And you have more decision into the winery together with your sister, and you are two totally different persons.
Yeah.
But my opinion is that when wines like this is coming to the Norwegian market, you can see that they are focused on the climate change.
Yes.
And what do you think the Piemonte is struggling about that question first of all? For instance, you were looking now 10 years ahead, but you have experience to climate, what you have to do, how should Piemonte stand out? Because Piemonte, as in my opinion, is that they are stretching the quality a lot. So you have not so good Langhe Nebbiolo or Barbera, almost not drinkable, I think. And then you have people who are just going a little bit up, they're doing stuff. Could you please explain for our listeners your thoughts about how important and what the climate will do to quality if you are not taking care of it?
I think climate has been very difficult, especially in the past 10 to 15 years, because Piemonte is used to have a very four-season kind of region. So you have a big winter with snow, so you will prune the vines, snow will come, the vine will go to dormant, the frost will kill all the bacteria in the soil, so you're a little bit safer. Then spring arrives, flowering happens, there is a lot of good rain during spring, so a lot of water in the soil. Summer is usually hot and warm, but usually lasted 2 months, July and August. And then September arrives, you have the fog starting to come, you have the beautiful temperature exchange between night and day. During the day, it's warm, so the grape still gets ripened, especially phenolically. And then night it gets cold, so you retain good acidity, good tannin, and kind of the perfect balance to then start picking end of September. Nowadays, we don't have four season anymore. Yeah. And that's the biggest deal. We don't get any snow. We don't get rain in winter. Sometime in January is 20 degrees. So the vines, if you prune too early, the vine thinks it's spring and the buds start falling and they start flowering. And then maybe in March, like it's happening this week, then it snows and everything frost. And summer are very, very long. And in August, we've been having these heat waves when it's like 40 degrees day and night for like 15 days in a row. And the vines actually goes in protection. You see the leaf crawling because they think they're about to die. So they go in protection, photosynthesis stop, and the ripening basically stop there. And then it starts again, and you see like alcohol and aromatics really developing, but tannin and acidity are still green. So you're unbalanced fruit.
Yeah.
So that has been the biggest challenge. It's really to know, to follow a calendar in the vineyards, because we used to have set calendars. Like my grandfather would always prune everything before going into Christmas holidays, because then we will not snow and no one wants to prune inside with snow on your feet.
Yeah.
But nowadays, if you prune that early, then it's you have very few chances to have a good crop. So now we're pushing pruning end of January, beginning of February. So by the time the vine is ready to start the cycle, it is spring. And everything they were doing back in the 80s, 90s, beginning of 2000 into agriculture was to concentrate, to have few clusters, but try to get ripe. Nowadays, if you do that, you're cooking the fruit. So we're leaving a lot more buds at pruning to have like, instead of 5, 6 cluster, you leave 12, 13. And then you, of course, always have time to cut back. We're not as aggressive as taking leaf away from the fruit zone because you're sunburning the fruit. So we keep more leaf, keep more coverage. Same with canopy management, same with cutting the grass. Of course, picking time has shifted quite a while. So there are many little things that have changed. And I think for us, being so dedicated in agriculture, being organic and biodynamic, it has been a little bit easier because it has been easier to be proactive towards this change. Spending a lot of time in the vineyard, you kind of see when the vines is changing and is asking for help. So it has been good to have this little adjustment. And I think in general, the region, it's having a hard time. And so many things are changing in agriculture and honestly inside the wineries. Because also Piemonte has been a very unique kind of story, up and down in styles. Because if you think about after the Second World War, Piemonte was left extremely poor. Very few families, you can probably count on a hand, could live on wine. They had a different job at Ferrero.
In which area, time that we are now?
We're around the 50s.
50s, yeah.
So everyone was pretty poor. They were farmers as a second job, but they also had a main job. So they were doing both. And then it's not only until like the 80s that Barolo really saw it happen. And that was thanks to the Barolo boys and to the revolution, kind of American revolution.
Yeah.
So everyone changed style into higher concentration, barriques, like stronger, more juicy, heavier wines. And now everything is changed again because now we're all more towards elegance and finesse, and we went back to big barrels.
Yeah.
So we're having a lot of ups and downs, and it's a lot for a winery to adjust.
Because in wineries and winery family, there are a lot of thinking of tradition. This was my grandmother did it, and so on. So after you have taken over, when did you take over official?
2017 was my first vintage.
So from that time and up to today, 6 years, 7 years now, it have been the biggest change. I think also in Piemonte and some thoughts. Are you sometimes thinking a good thought to your father when he said he decided to be organic so early, so the wines are more healthy?
I can be more happy about it because honestly, especially in these vintages being so dry, to see how resilient the vines are, especially old vines, if treated well, it's pretty amazing. Vines have good roots; they're strong plants, so they do adapt.
Yeah.
You don't have to, but they adapt if you have been training them to have their own immune system, so you don't hit them with chemical and water as soon as you can. So it has been beautiful. It has been probably the best heritage that it could have given us to make that decision when it started.
Yeah. With all this work, all you do, all your thoughts, 24/7, all times, everything, that means that someone is going to taste your wines. And we're going to now taste the first one. And we have already poured it. And we're going to taste a bit of the Long Dinner Mule. after my opinion on the Norwegian market, of course, we are told that the Norwegian market is a Barbera country. Some very good people say that make those Seto great again. I don't know, but we're going to talk about the Lange Nebbiolo because I think it's a hidden treasure. If you find, and I don't know if you agree with me, but are there some connection between acidity, alcohol levels, and quality? Compare if you're looking to a whole bunch of Nebbiolo, Lange Nebbiolo, in the monopole shops. Could you find out the good ones through looking to acidity and alcohol levels, or you have to go to the producer and see more?
I think there are some amazing producer out there of Nebbiolo. Lange Nebbiolo, I went to the shop yesterday at the Monopole, and I also saw near to my wine a lot of Alto Piemonte wines, which I was very happy to see because it's a personal favorite. But there are some, especially some region within Lange and Roero and Monferrato that makes very good Nebbiolo. Lange Nebbiolo. I'm personally a big fan of this wine because I think it's always the first step into the Nebbiolo variety before you get into Barolo or Barbaresco. It's a little bit a sneak peek of a vintage of what the wine can be with just kind of a little bit toned down, a little less structure, but very elegant. And I think it's perfect to approach this variety that has acidity, has tannin, has elegance. It can have it can be a little bit all over the place. I think it really depends on the soil, on the terroir. And that's why I think I love Lange Nebbiolo coming from the western side, so La Morra or Verduno or that area, there's sandier soil. And I do love Nebbiolo coming from Roero personally.
Because the 22 vintage we have here have 14% alcohol. I have a sleep when you talk, there's tasting a little bit wine. And this is a balanced wine to alcohol, even if it's high on alcohol in numbers.
Yeah.
But please tell me a little bit about what you think of the 22 vintage compared to others. Is it hot, cold vintage? What do you think?
It was definitely hot.
Yeah.
So 22 was more similar to 17 or 20. They were definitely, it's one of those vintages where we had heat waves coming all summer. It was very dry. It didn't rain much during summer. And it was very hot day and night. So it was a little bit complicated. And that kind of what brings alcohol to be higher because naturally sugar went up. But it's kind of these fast heat waves that develop sugar, but they're not really slow growing. So tannin and acidity are still very present and very green. So I think this is one of the vintages where it really makes a difference what you do in agriculture and your choices, when to pick, how to make them grow. And definitely what you do into the winery also makes a big change. But I think it's one of those wine that it does have alcohol on the label, but you don't feel it when you...
There's always a discussion of in Norway about alcohol levels. We talk about it because it's a burning sensation of alcohol in your mouth. It's not included and so on. And then also when we have it this way, lots of wine to taste, we have also experienced that, okay, it's possible to make. But what I is taking, we call it a typical acidity level, young, this is still a young wine. What do you think this wine will be if we say, okay, we're buying it now, we store it? Because this is a not so expensive wine. You can have it in order to every day, or you can drink Barolo every day, not a problem. But this is a typical day-to-day wine, and they often serve in restaurants and so on. But how is the life on this one here if you want to take it in your cellar?
I think it would be amazing. I actually think that we don't store enough Nebbiolo. We usually drink it very fast, and that's why we already have the 22 vintage in the market. I think we do keep a library at the cellar, and we open sometime 13, 12, 14, 15s, and they are amazing.
Yeah.
So they do have that tannin and acidity, that backbone to hold for me.
Yeah. And then that's my key thing is that this one here, having a blast in the cellar, buy in 12, 24, 36 bottles, keep it, and then you're buying younger and drinking older. So that's a key issue, many are thinking, because the quality levels of this tasting palate, where the tannin is a little bit down, food comes forward, good glasses, it's a perfect day-to-day one. But how is life in Piemonte nowadays?
Nowadays, it's good. It's definitely, at least for us, the weather has been a little bit concerning because it's just we're trying to adjust to everything, but life is good. We've seen. Thankfully, we still have a lot of people come and visiting us. I thankfully had a lot of Norwegian come and visiting me, which I love. Every time they come to the winery, even just to say hi and have a little tour.
I just have to tell our listeners that this place here is how many rooms it is? Five.
So very simple.
Yes, and they are on a hillside, so often you see fog outside. It's a beautiful view, but they have very good gin tonics, and very good food. They have often very truffles served in Persian you will love. And then you're on the top of a winery, so you're never going out of wine. You have good people working.
Yes, we do.
So this introduction to this, I don't call it a hotel I call it a home. You're coming home.
Yeah.
Because you can meet you and your sister. You can, or serving breakfast, you're coming up and your friends and so on. So there's more coming home to it. So we're going to take that as a little add to the podcast where you book it, because to live in Piemonte don't mean that you have to live in hotels. You don't need it. It's very common. I recommend it. But I didn't swim. But I am a record on gin tonic in the morning.
I think when you drink a lot of Barolo and those tannins, you do need a gin tonic or fresh beer at the end of the day. It's very important.
And the best advice from your Piemonte. But what do you think when you're having a wine who going from the order range to the basic listing in Norway after so few years? Because the introduction to the importers, the Rebel group, was a little bit special because they were looking for wine with Rebel in it.
Yeah. So they started the company in like around 2020. So it was a new company. And I think Tulliv, one of the guys at Rebel, was Googling wine that are called Rebel or something with Rebel in it. And we do make white wine, Viognier, that is called Rebel. And so kind of serendipitous. He found us and he asked us to send some samples, and we got in touch. And it was very shocking because it was the beginning. And it was 2020, so it was kind of a tough year for everyone. And we started just sending few wines. And then he called me one day and said, "There's actually a tender on Piemonte's wine, on Dolcetto, Nebbiolo, and Barbera, if you want to send us some sample." And I sent them, and I remember very well, it was end of August. We were harvesting, and he calls me, and he's like, "You want a tender?" And I'm like, "What does that mean?" I was not in Norway market before, so I'm like, "What does it mean? Why are you so happy?" And he's like, "It's a big deal." And then he calls me the day after. It's like, "You won another tender, and you got second."
You won two.
We won two, and we got second with the Barbera one. So I was like, "Is it my birthday? What's going on?" It's great news. And that was the introduction. And
that means that when the first order were coming, it's 10,000s of bottles.
Yeah, it was big. It was like, he's like, that's what I asked when I asked him, "What does that mean?" It's like, that means that all your wine is coming to Norway. And they did become one of the biggest market for us. And it has been a lot of fun because that means that thankfully I can come.
So you learned that two things. People from Trondheim, it's nice.
Yeah.
And then you learn that you have to take the phone when you're coming from first 47.
Yes.
It's a Norwegian call.
And that has happened again this summer with the Barolo.
Yeah.
It was August 15, which in Italy it's a big holiday. It's Ferragosto. It's kind of a holiday. It's a Christian holiday, but it's to celebrate kind of prosperity before harvest. And we always do barbecue and have a fun. And I was having a barbecue at the coast with my family, and Tulliv calls, and I'm like, why is he calling me?
Yeah.
And I picked the phone, and it was the Barolo tender.
Have Tulliv moved to the VIP list on your phone?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's my favorite.
Yeah, okay. But when you're talking about VIP list, Donkey Thomas, who's that?
That's Rebel.
That's Rebel.
So that was another amazing coincidence, is that I had this donkey called Rebel. So
it's not called Thomas.
That was his second name.
Yeah, okay. Thomas Rebel, the donkey, okay.
The donkey. So that was another beautiful match.
Yeah, there's a match in heaven, both in boating. You learned how to take Norwegian calls, and it's been a good trip, and it will continue. But the latest one who's coming now is the Barolo.
Yes.
Would go into the basic listing. That means that it's 300 for many shops. Mm-hmm. It's going to be there. It's costing under 500 kroner, which is a very decent price. It's coming I'd say that the first 6,000 wines will go out fast. It is a myth. Maybe it's true, but sometimes it's the when the wine over 400 kroner is introduced, and it's late in the month after the trend, everyone get paid, is more. It's easier to get success. This is early, 6th of March, so it's going to be very exciting. But I think it's going to loosen very fast. I'm not sure. But so, tell me a little bit about the Barolo 2019, because it's in the many shops from the order range. The shops have decided it's all over in Oslo, around Oslo. So it's not certain shops who buys it. It's several places. And if you go to the shops today, there are brands who have been there for 10, 20 years, and suddenly you see the thing with Barolo from a view that it have a female aspect of design. So please tell me, how and when did you change the design style to that elegance that you have in it?
I think
some history of all your wines with the design label.
I think the design on the label was always a little bit. It's not for us. It's a little bit different because we're not the 12th generation making wine. We're new to it. So the idea was like, it's not about having a big name on the label, but it is to have a label that tells a little bit about our style into the wine. So always to keep label clean with good details, but always with kind of a feminine touch and a lot of elegance, which come with itself, with Serena and I. And it's the same decision that we take in the style of the wine. And Barolo La Morra, for us, it's very important to be able to put the name of the village on the bottle, because La Morra is known to be the most feminine and elegant side of Barolo. We're on the occidental side of the Barolo region, more sandy soil, younger soil. So a little bit more fruit and flower compared to the spice and earthiness of Serralunga and on the eastern side. And definitely a little bit more of an approachable structure. So a little bit softer tannin, softer acidity that are very well involved in the body of the wine. And this is always what we aim to do when making this wine. This wine comes from 4 different parcels, all in La Morra, but different altitude and exposition. So we pick everything separately, ferment separately, and then make the best blend before going in barrel, traditional big barrels for around 24 months, and then bottle. Gentle extraction, delicate aging. So we just try to do everything possible to really pay homage to the village of La Morra and to the elegance that it has.
But how big is the production in a good year from that?
So actually, it's funny that 19 because 19 was a very shy vintage, because at flowering we had a little bit of losses, but on a average vintage we make around 20,000 bottles.
Yeah. So Norwegian must be aware you don't have more.
No, we don't have much more, especially of this vintage.
Yeah. Next autumn, you're going to buy a cabin in Oslo, so you're going to move there.
That would be amazing, actually.
It's good.
It would be a dream.
But if we taste the Barolo, for me, I've given this for some time ago now, some 91 points, and it was coming up from 89 first, and this is 90. No, this is 91. This to sure, and the points are one view of it, but under the tasting, it was the best one of over 60. It was going in. It was a boom out of the table. But what I see also that it has some young tannins. It has some tannins. It needs something in the glass. We come here. We have a little bit cold. It's been some time in the glass now. It's gone 40 minutes.
Yeah.
We have talked to 40 minutes, so it's go fast.
That's great.
But what happened is that the wine need. And could we have a talk just now in the ending? Because we're going to do 2 episodes.
Yeah.
Because we're going to have 2 and we have more wine. Yeah, we're going to do episode 2. But what's happening is that, could you tell me about the importance of breeding by glass, by decanting, or whatever you do to get the quality up in a young bowl?
Yeah, I think oxygen is one of the things that we care about the most, from when the grape comes into the winery, to aging, to the vessel that we decide, to bottling, to the cork. So oxygen is something that we really care about because it can change the wine a lot. And I think a younger wine like a 2019 does need a little bit of oxygen to just open up and get the generous aromatics and that palate feeling to be a little bit more open. So I do love definitely to have it in a glass for a little bit of a longer time. And you can decant it if you want. I do like just to open it at least an hour in advance. I serve it and maybe
But then you
pour out a glass.
yeah,
Yes.
and then you clean a glass and so on. But have you tested the back and forward in glass just to do it faster?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's the best way, especially if you need to drink it as soon as it opens. So to kind of double decant it, it's ideal, or to pass it along glass. Of course, the quality of the glass, it's extremely important.
You can be sure that we are using only Riedel and the Vinofil.no. No problem, never ever. Riedel forever.
Yeah.
There's no problem.
No, that's
But you think that many people is not missing that point that wines in that kind of category, because it's not it's a quite expensive wine if you look to the Noen, which is probably even in Piemonte, they're not drinking every day.
No.
Barolo, it's a kind of when you are turning 30s and 40s and 50 and have the wrinkles and everything coming, this is the thing we'll write it. But when you taste it, but do you think that people miss that point that someone needs some air and drink it too early?
Yes.
That when you go to tasting the World,
yeah.
you say, this is fantastic, but you haven't tasted a very old. Why do you think people forget that they're buying it today and drinking it this evening?
I think the problem is that in general, we have a little bit of a problem with the urgency of doing everything in nowadays world. We're running all the time. And I think wine is a little bit like that. And we as winemaker or journalists, we think a lot about the aging of the wine, but it has been proven that like 80% of the wine is drunk within a day from buying. So it's you buy it and you drink it at night.
So you still 10 years to make it, and a lot of energy. And people drink it 4 after the score.
But that's why we release wine a little bit later. So we're releasing now 2019, while in Barolo you can release 21 now. So it's like we keep it in the cellar one more year to kind of already give a head start to our consumers. For us, it's very important, and then we hope they do have a little bit of patience for extra time.
So we're going to go to the episode 2, but Giovanna, this is a very nice time for me. I'm going to do your time in a way more exciting next time. We're going to find something fun to do.
For sure.
For this time, we cheer for the Barolo and
thank you
for this.
Cheers.